Hello merry gamers and welcome to this, a mirror review of Earthlock. Earthlock follows in on the coattails of its kind of predecessor, Earthlock Festival of Magic, although it's not right to say this is a new game. Rather, Norwegian creators Snowcastle Games have essentially re-released an improvement over what was, at the time, a fairly average game. Having set out to revive the classic RPGs of lore, I wanted to see if Snowcastle managed to achieve this time round what they didn't quite manage to do in the first iteration. Set in Umbria, a world racked by cataclysm, the game is centred around Scavenger Amon and a typical RPG band of unlikely cohorts. Earthlock is at first glance a classic top-down RPG, much in the vein of the early Final Fantasy games, and to this regard it captures what it targeted quite well. Combat follows the old-school turn-based mantra, with some additions and changes which I will come on to later. The overworld is a decent size, and the locations being nothing more than human-sized objects for you to interact with to visit them. The devs wanted to recapture the feel of the 90s RPGs, and I gotta admit, they've done a pretty good job here. I do feel like I'm back in my childhood playing them. You're thrown into the game almost immediately, with the tutorials on combat and the likes being over and done with almost instantly. The occasional cutscene tutorial is thrown in for key mechanics such as saving, but for the most part the game will simply let you know that a tutorial is available in the menu without disrupting the gameplay. I can't help but appreciate this approach, especially as someone who prefers to learn by trial and error in games, as opposed to having my hand held. It's a great way to satisfy all players. And talking of saving, it is worth noting that this game follows the whole you may only save at specific locations methods that RPGs used to follow. Whilst this may be a negative to some users, save locations are placed fairly enough that it never really bothered me. I think at most I only ever had to replay about 5 minutes of the game when my party got wiped out. At the highest level, this is your run-of-the-mill RPG. Build and level a team, progress with the story, fight mobs and bosses, die, grind some levels, do it all again. There are some puzzle elements to the game, which does add a nice extra something that a lot of RPGs lacked. Finding certain enemies to activate certain switches in the right order, or finding the right part to fix the right switch, it does take some level of thinking. Whilst it's not extensive as some games go, I'm looking at you Ocarina Water Temple, I did get left scratching my head from time to time, as the game gives you little indication of what you need to do. It is refreshing to see a few extra mechanics thrown in though. Obviously, as this is an RPG, there is a levelling system, which is quite different to anything else I've come across. As you level up, you can place a card onto your board, next to any active slot, with different slots allowing for stat boosts, traits or talents. These cards have to be found in the world or crafted, and they can be swapped out at any time, allowing you to respec as you need, assuming you have the right card. It's an okay system, although I occasionally found myself unable to upgrade a character as I intended due to a lack of relevant cards, which sort of forced me instead to go in a different way. Combat is of course the main part of any RPG, and this game nails it. The controls are a little different, there's a lot less of the whole scrolling through menus that you kind of think of when you think of this sort of game, but that's a good thing, and I quickly found the control scheme very familiar and very intuitive. The combat screen consists of the central combat area, with a team info on the left, and the order of move on the right. High speed stat means that characters appear more often in the stack, which changes dynamically in turn with changes to speed. This allows for some tactical thinking as you aim to take out certain enemies before their next turn, or get ready for specific incoming attacks. The big difference here, however, is the pairing system. Members of your group are formed into pairs, typically a fighter and a protector, with the fighters dealing the damage, and protectors spending most of their time providing support via heals, buffs or taunts. The more fights you win with characters paired, the stronger their bond becomes. Now this unlocks passive traits at each level, such as stat increases or chance effects like poison. Beyond this, after a bond is formed, the pair can then access their boosted attacks, which normally comes in the form of a stronger or an area effect variant such as group heals or group attacks. Higher bond levels mean that these stay active for more consecutive turns before they need recharging, so a level 3 bond means you can use your super attack 3 times in a row. Enemy types are quite varied, and with over 60 different enemy types it stays fresh, with each having their own strength and weakness. But typically they take one of two forms, either a ground or flying, with a few having the ability to be either. This forces you to change tactic as you go into fights, as ground-based melee abilities have no effect on flying opponents, but ranged attacks use limited ammo, forcing you to either carry extra or switch to melee for ground foes to reserve that ammunition. That being said, ammo isn't really an issue. Crafting ammo is simply a case of farming the right plants and turning it into the relevant items. It's not complicated, but I found myself spending way too much time grinding for extra ammo or potions. Aesthetically speaking, it's nothing to write home about. I can see the direction the creators were going for, and I won't deny that the game has its charm, but many games before it took a similar approach and they look a lot better, with textures and objects here being lower res, and animations like running can be quite janky at times. This may just be me being spoilt for, nice graphics recently, and for a small new indie developer, I can call it fair, but I can't deny that many last-gen console games looked better. Sound-wise, however, it isn't bad. The music is enjoyable, and it doesn't really become annoying or repetitive. The story is, unfortunately, the big letdown for this game. It feels shallow and it feels slow, with very little in the way to compel me to keep playing. There is a lore, but it's hardly explored, and that is going to be a big turn away for some people. With that being said, the devs have been quoted as saying they want this to be the first of a series, and they have seeded the potential for a rich, vibrant lore and world, so a sequel might actually be worth a look. Overall, I give this game a 6.5 out of 10, and this is why. Combat is solid, but every other aspect feels average at best in my opinion. For the majority of gamers, this is not something I would recommend running out to buy. That's not to say it's bad, it's not. But the slow and shallow story, combined with the unexciting world, makes this hard to recommend to most players. However, those who long to scratch that itch left behind by the pre-millennia RPGs, this game captures perfectly the experience it set out to emulate. But I think that is actually the problem. The developers did such a good job recreating the old RPG format that they didn't just recapture its greatness, they also got all of its flaws. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.